All right, well, we might begin. Welcome, everyone. We're pretty excited to offer you this modern virtual training session to you in the comfort of your own home or office or wherever you may be. That's the great thing about this. Thank you again for joining us. And again, we're very lucky and pleased to have Sarah Boyce on board from Xero. She's part of the Xero training team and she's going to be taking the session tonight. This training session is basically to streamline things and improve efficiency. So we're going to tap into some of those reports that you may not know about and are very handy in terms of providing information, say, to banks or just for your own management, I suppose, of your business. So not only are we going to be tapping into things like reconciling, but again, some of those reports that can produce like cash flow forecasts, for example, to satisfy the bank. And without further ado, I'll pass it on to Sarah from Xero, and she's just going to quickly introduce herself. And again, throughout the session, if you can keep yourself muted, and if you have any questions, please do use the Q&A box, and I'll be monitoring the questions. And we want to keep this as an interactive sort of session, so please don't feel shy, just put it out there. Thank you. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you very much, Josie, and welcome everyone to our Xero training session today. So my name is Sarah Boyce. I do work for Xero and I am a partner success manager. So I've been with Xero for around about 5 years, but before that I was in practice, and my entire kind of childhood and upbringing was on a farm. So I am a country girl. I know that there'll be some other country people on the Zoom meeting today. So really happy to go through and really dive a little bit deeper into Xero for you, so you can really get some of that important data out that you need to really monitor where your business is at. And of course, like Josie said, to give to third parties that need it, like the bank. So with our agenda today, what we're going to be going over, we're going to be starting off by looking into a couple of tips and tricks with our bank rules. And for anyone that doesn't know about how to set up a rule, I'm going to go through that. We're then going to look at tracking categories and the budget manager. So obviously very important to be budgeting in our businesses, and really important for you guys to know how you can do that in Xero. We're then going to dive into some Xero reporting, just to take a look around the Xero reporting and let you know what is there. I'll also show you some tips and tricks there so that you can customize some of your favorite reports for easy use then on after. And then of course, we'll go over some help and resources and next steps. And we'll have a little bit of a pause at the end for some Q&A and to answer some questions in the box. So without further ado, let's jump over to Xero. Okay, so coming over to Xero, I obviously am seeing my lovely dashboard that I see when I log on. Now, just a couple of kind of like navigation tips and tricks for you. So when we're logging on to Xero, just make sure you're not ever going into more than one, say if you do have a couple of businesses, one Xero file within the one browser. Ideally, what you want to do is use an incognito window if you do need to open up another Xero file for another business, or what you can do is open up a complete separate browser. So today I'm using Google Chrome, and that is the most recommended browser to use for Xero. So if you're not using Google Chrome, I highly recommend to use this one. Other ones do include obviously Safari and Firefox. What I would do is avoid Internet Explorer. Okay, so you might experience some performance issues. Reports may not be loading as you expect. So really important that number one, first off, we are using the correct browser. Now, once we are in Xero, let's come and have a little bit a look around of our bank rules. So when I come to the dashboard, I can see that I have some bank accounts on the dashboard. I am able to edit this dashboard. So if I don't see a particular credit card or loan account on there and I'd like to show it, I can actually hide and show those as I please for me, for what I want to view. Now, when we're wanting to create bank rules, there's a couple of ways we can get through to our bank rules. So we can come in to reconcile bank account. we can come over to one of our transactions and we can click on options and click create rule. Now, the beauty of creating a rule from our transaction is that some of these details over here are going to pre-fill into our rule. We can also create a rule from cash coding. So over here within cash coding, this is an amazing screen where we can actually go in and bulk reconcile a lot of our transactions. So great if you have to get up to date for your BAS period. Over here on the right-hand side, you'll see I can create a bank rule as well. So as well from the cash coding screen, that will bring through some of those payee details for me to make sure I'm servicing as many transactions as possible within my rule. So I'll just zoom a little bit for you. The other way we can get to bank rules is by clicking on our drop-down arrow on Manage Account, or from the dashboard, it will be on there as well. So if we click on those three little dots, and you'll see bank rules, okay? So they're the different ways we can get around to our bank rule area. So within bank rules, we then of course can create a spend money rule, a receive money rule, and a transfer rule. So the purpose of the rules is really to start automating those transactions that are going to come in the future and tell Xero where we'd like those rules to be coded on our trial balance. So it's really about automating those transactions that come through, and you're coding them to that same place all the time, one by one. Creating a rule will obviously make those processes more efficient. So coming back to the dashboard, I'm going to come back into the bank account and I'm going to come over to cash coding. Now, cash coding is ideally for transactions that don't require to be matched to an invoice or don't require to be matched to a bill. So when we raise an invoice and when we raise a bill, in our Reconcile tab, Xero will come up with, like what we see here, a green match. So it's recognizing here that I have a sales invoice that matches to a similar amount and date and payee to my line on my bank statement. So if we can think of the left-hand side as our bank and the right-hand side as our Xero transactions. So we don't want to be cash coding anything that needs to be matched to an invoice or bill. That will be done in our Reconcile screen. So over in cash coding, what we're really wanting to do in here is code up all of our cash transactions, like our bank fees, our loan repayments, all of those things that you might expect that won't have an invoice or bill. Now, when I'm going through and creating a bank rule, it's quite good to come in here and go, right, where do I start? What's the first bank rule that I would go and set up? So you can see here, I've sorted the column payee alphabetically. That lets me know if I'm starting to see a lot of the same expenses or income to the same supplier or payee, that's where I might like to begin. If I see a whole heap of bank fees that are going to, say, for example, NAB, I might want to go and jump in and make a bank rule for those. So let's use Central City Parking today as an example. So clicking over on the right-hand side, I'm going to click Create Bank Rule. Now, once I come into the rule, that's going to take me directly into creating the rule. You'll see that my Central City Parking payee information has automatically come in for me, which is great. Now, I'm going to show you a few tips and tricks here. On number one, we're really telling Xero when the amount of money comes in, what do we want? How do we want Xero to match this? We need to give Xero a set of conditions to create the rule. So you'll see here that I have payee there. A good tip and trick here is to select any text field. So that makes sure no matter if my details come in my payee field or if the details come in my description field, this rule is still going to pick up on the fact that this payment was made to Central City Parking. So you'll actually find that you'll pick up more with your rule if you have that on any text field. It of course will, it will depend on what we're creating the rules for. Now, the other tip and trick here is that you'll see that we have an option to have the rule match all conditions or have the rule match any conditions. So if I have that on all, and say, for example, I want to go and add another condition and I want to pop in amount. Say that I pay Central City Parking around about $12 every fortnight for parking. If I have that set as equals $12 and equals Central City Parking, the rule must meet both conditions, which means if I have a Central City Parking fee for, say, $13, this rule's not going to pick up. Okay. If I change that to any, however, you can maybe guess what's going to happen there. That will now pick up anything that equals $12, no matter if there's Central City Parking there or not. Okay, so just be thinking about that when you are setting up your first set of conditions here within our bank rule. So for today, I'm going to click all and I'm going to take off amount. What I am going to do is, instead of having equals, because this might look familiar to you, sometimes our descriptions and references in our bank statement will come with numbers. Sometimes they'll come through with a capital P. Sometimes they'll come through with a small p. So what we're going to do here is we're actually going to change that from equals to contains. Okay, so this is further setting up our rule to make sure we're going to capture all those transactions we need. Now, we do have lots of other options here to be able to capture other conditions, but for today, I'm just going to leave that as any text field contains and Central City Parking. Another really great idea to do, and I taught my mother this, I helped my family out with their books, is that we create drawings rules for them. So we'll have a rule with, say, 10 or so suppliers that we know that are private, that we know that are drawings. And then what we do later on, and I'll show you in a moment, we then send that automatically to drawings for us, so we don't mix that up with our business expenses. So you can certainly think outside the box here and use these rules for a lot of things like that. Okay, so just keep in mind all the different things that we may be able to use the rules for. Some people, so hopefully you're registered for SCP if you have payroll and you're using Xero for payroll, but anyone, really, really smaller businesses that I see, back in the day, they used to create rules for wages. So if they had a cash payment to one employee, another employee, they would have all of the wage details in here and then have that coded then to wages payable. What else I see other people doing is they will actually use this for supplier rules. So say if I am traveling around a lot, I'm purchasing a lot of fuel, I may want to come and put in some common suppliers that I know that get coded to a certain account, like motor vehicle expenses fuel. Okay, so you can start to see how these bank rules are really going to make your processes a lot more efficient. So I'm just going to leave that as Central City Parking for today and move on to number 2. Now, with the contact, I usually keep this as the payee from the bank, because that is the contact that has come through. That may not always work for you. So you can choose to just create a new contact here. So all I'm simply going to do here is copy that down, because my contact is Central City Parking. That's who I made my payment to. Now, coming down to number 3, we'll see here that we're able to add a line in for a fixed value line. Now, usually in our bank rules, we would come straight down to number 4. We may give it a little bit of a description, or we could just leave it blank. And then we might come and enter in our chart of account that we'd like this rule to apply to. Now, if I just leave that rule like that, that's going to send 100% of my amount in my bank to 493 Travel National. Now, if I use fixed value line items, I'm just going to step you through an example of when we may need to use these. These are great when we have a fixed and a variable amount all within one transaction. So an example of that, we may have a commission amount that we need to take out of sales that is fixed. So if this was a received money, as an example, we could actually have this go to, say, an account like bank fees or fee, and we could have a set $10 fee taken out of our sales amount here. So that's pretty cool there. So you can also do a negative on there, obviously, to recognise that that is an expense versus the income. Now, what you can also use it for are loan repayments. So you think about all those loan repayments you make, also hire purchase repayments, chattel mortgage repayments. So we know that they have a portion of capital and we know that they have a portion of interest. So this one, number 3, is great for those. So we know our loan or our capital amount is going to be, depending on the loan, will be a lot of the time will be fixed. So we can come through here and say if we choose a liability for us and say our loan repayment is $1,000 a month. When we come down to number 4 now, I can choose interest expense and have 100% of the rest of that going to interest expense. So that's going to now calculate your variable interest rate that's going to be charged on each one of those repayments. And we're also going to be making sure that coding is done correctly in here as well. So absolutely use the fixed value line items, but generally when we're just needing to send an amount through to our profit and loss, we will just be coming down to number 4. So I'm going to leave that as travel. And I'm just going to go through a couple more scenarios of how we might want to use our bank rules here. A really, really common one, and particularly in business when we are kind of sharing private and business use items like telephone, we can actually come in here and set up business and private. We can set up private use to be taken off those transactions automatically. So that actually saves your advisor or yourself a journal at the period end because you would have already dealt with your private use. So if my phone, for example, was 80% business use, we can put that as 20% private, send that one to our drawings account. As long as our total is coming to 100%, we have now automated all of our phone bills for the year and made sure that private use has been taken off accordingly. The other thing we can do in here is we can gross up sales. Similar to before, except this is an example where we have a percentage commission or fee taken off instead of a fixed fee. So if I had sales here and bank fees there, I can actually do 110% here and negative 10% there. Again, as long as my total comes to 100%, I am able to save and use this rule. So what that is doing is that's taking 10% of my gross income and putting that through to fees like it should be, and then grossing my sale up so we can record the proper amount of gross income. So lots and lots of things we can do with our rules here. So for today, we're just going to leave that as travel and just make sure that one's 100%. Coming down to the reference, so usually I would leave this as the reference will be set from the reference from our bank, and coming on the target bank account. So this is all about, okay, so say if we have a couple of loan accounts, a couple of working accounts, we might have a savings account, we might have a term deposit, farm management deposit. So what we're really doing here is choosing, okay, we've created this rule. Do we want that to apply to all accounts, or do we just want it to be applied to this account? So you do have the options there, but if you do know that those transactions are going to be coming through on other accounts, I would actually have it set up as all bank accounts here. You don't want to have to recreate these rules for every bank account where the same things are happening. Now, the last item is probably one of the most important, is giving the rule a title. So when we're giving the rule a title, it's always smart to put in the title what the rule is doing. So I have a lot of people that really like this, and they will come here and they'll type in the account code and name so we know where it's been coded to, and then they might leave the payee name on there as well. So once we're finished with our rule and we have reviewed everything that we need to, we can then go through and click Save. Once we click Save, you'll now see that I have all these other transactions that have now been automatically updated. So the rules will go and apply to any transactions that are sitting there uncoded. So if you are coming in and are having to do 6 months worth of coding, you can imagine how fast this could be if you could come and set up a couple of these rules to automate that. So really, really cool. Now we sort by payee, you'll see that those have all been populated. Now, when we're in cash coding and we are reviewing these rules, so it is important that we review the rules, make sure they're picking up correctly. I don't need to select or check anything here. All I need to do is click Save and Reconcile, the green button down the bottom, and that will actually save and reconcile everything in this screen that has an account and a tax rate filled in. So if I click Save, and if I just select one, however, that's only going to save and reconcile the one item I have selected. So there's a difference there. So if I click Save and Reconcile Selected, you can see that I've saved and reconciled one. If I don't select anything, I can click Save and Reconcile. And like I mentioned before, that's now going to save all of those within account and tax rate. So just coming back to our bank rules as well, I'll just quickly show you another rule that you will absolutely love. So spend money, receive money. So spend money are our payments, receive money is our income or deposits. Our transfer money rule is for bank transfers. Now, I'm not sure about your businesses, but I definitely know that my parents' business, they have a lot of bank accounts. They do a lot of bank transfers. So having a bank transfer rule just makes things so much easier for them. So if you do have a lot of accounts, you are constantly transferring back and forth. It can get confusing with setting up a clearing account. So what we can do here is set up a transfer rule between those bank accounts. Okay, so all you're coming in here and doing is selecting the conditions, so setting the conditions up, create a transfer between the other bank accounts. You can use tracking here as well. So you can use tracking in the other bank rules as well, which is really, really great idea if you're using that. We'll jump into tracking in a moment. Set the reference, target bank account, and giving the ruler title as well. So that's going to automate all your transfers for the year between those accounts where it matches those conditions. So that's another really great one to set up that will save a lot of time. Okay, so coming back to cash coding, just a couple more tips and tricks in here. So if I want to come and sort by payee and come over to account and say I need to send that to purchases, we have a whole heap of shortcut keys that you can use here. So if I simply have my cursor below purchases and click on the plus button, that will actually copy the line above for me. So see how quickly that was to go through and update all of those as purchases. What we can also do is we can click on one line, hold down our Shift key, and that will also select all for us. If I simply enter in one account while these are highlighted, that's actually going to change all of them because I've got them highlighted for that reason. If I want to unhighlight or uncheck, I can simply click uncheck all. If I did make a mistake, I didn't quite want cleaning on there, I can actually click discard changes and that will remove everything that I had just done. Now, if we want to select items that aren't in a row, that's simply clicking our Control or Command key. So by holding my finger down on Command, I can actually now come and select a couple that aren't in a row, but all over the place. And again, if I update one, as long as these are selected, they're all now going to update. So you can see how fast this can be. So unchecking all, saving and reconciling, that's going to reconcile 8 just like that. And so before you know it, you're going to get through your bank reconciliation really, really quickly. Yeah, so to move on to the next one. So what we also have in here is the ability to apply a rule. So say if we know that Central City Parking is going to travel because we named that rule accordingly, we can actually come in and use that rule without creating another one if we just need to get this done as an example. So I can actually click apply rule, and then that will actually now come and update to that account for me. Okay, so that's perfect for when your rule hasn't quite covered something and you need to get that coding done. Obviously, best practice would be that you go back into the rule, edit the rule, so it will then pick it up. Okay, so let's just talk quickly about that. How do we go and edit a rule? So we've made a rule, but how do we go and then edit that to make sure that it's going to apply? So simply coming through to bank rules, clicking on our rule here, we're then able to edit the rule as we need, and then we can then go down and save. Another little tip about your bank rules is that they will be applied in a certain order. You can see here that we have number 1, 7-Eleven, number 2, travel. So I can actually move the order of those rules as well if I'd like that order changed. Cool. So I'm just going to pause there for a moment. Any questions? Josie, anything else you might like me to go over in terms of bank rules?
Why would you reorder them? Just what's the purpose of reordering rules?
Yeah, okay. So the purpose of the reordering of rules is that we're telling Xero a set of conditions within the rule to follow. And if those set of conditions aren't met on the first rule, Xero will then look to the second rule. So just because a transaction doesn't get captured by the first rule, it may get captured by the second rule. But say we need to update the rule so it does get captured, we then may want to drag number 2 to be number 1 so that it will pick up. Okay, if a transaction doesn't pick up with the correct rule, then obviously it may be sent to the wrong account, is the reasoning. So that might be particularly good with those drawings rules that I was mentioning before. You would have the drawings rules set as last after all of the other rules had been, Xero was looking to apply them.
Yeah, I love bank rules. It sort of almost takes away the manual handling of bookkeeping, really. So very good takeaway. I think that the next thing we were sort of going to cover was tracking categories. We briefly mentioned it in the bank rules. So say we have a farmer who's got a stud farm and then cropping, they might want to track those two as almost like separate businesses, but just to see how they're tracking individually. How is that?
No, that's a great question. So you saw there before, while I was in bank rules and also while I was in cash coding, you actually have the ability to apply your tracking categories nearly anywhere in Xero. So this column called region, that is actually my tracking category. Now, while we're navigating around Xero, it's actually really, this is a really good tip, duplicate your tabs. It means that you don't have to go back and forth all the time. So if I come over to accounting and advanced and come down to tracking categories, you'll see here that I'm able to add a tracking category, a top level, and then I can add up to over 100 subcategories down here. So if I would like to go and add a tracking category, say, for example, my farming business, and I'm going to have one for cropping. And what was the other one, Josie?
Sheep stud.
Sheep stud, as an example. So I've gone and created another tracking category there. You can only have 2 top level categories, but you can have quite a few, like over 100 under each one here. And you can use these anywhere throughout Xero. So you can use them in payroll, you can use them in journals, in our bank reconciliation. So when I come back to my other tab and I do a bit of a refresh, you'll see now that farming column has updated. So as I'm in here and I'm needing to cash code transactions, I can actually come and bulk apply tracking codes. So that's pretty cool as well. So if I need to send it to purchases as an example, I can make sure they've all been applied to my tracking. So that's how you set up tracking, is you come through to settings, select your categories and save. Once you've done that, you can then use those throughout the product. And cash coding is a great way to bulk apply those. So that's going to take me through to our next, I'm going to quickly go over the budget manager for you, and then we're going to jump into reporting, and I'm going to show you how you can create a tracking profit and loss. What we're also going to do is do some work with Nankivell to have a report available for you guys to access as well for your tracking at template level.
And just on that, if you actually don't assign a tracking category to a transaction, it's just going to default to an overall business category, isn't it? Like if you don't actually assign farming or sheep stud, it won't be captured in those reports, just for everybody's info. Yep.
Yeah, and so with your tracking reports, it's always recommended that we add the unassigned tracking column. And I'll show you that in a moment, because that will show you what hasn't been applied. So why don't we jump into that first while we're speaking about it. So coming through into the report center, there's quite a lot of reports in here, okay? So ideally, we do want to be using the new report wherever possible. So if I come into a profit and loss, now this is quite simple to make, and we only need to make it once. So if I want to come and say do last quarter, I'm going to click on edit layout. Within edit layout, I'm going to come and add in some tracking columns. So you can see that my tracking categories are called farming and region here. So for today, I'm just going to add in a couple of region tracking columns. And a part of that, like I mentioned before, we're going to make sure that we have that unassigned. So when I click on a column and come to the right-hand side, you'll see that I can choose which ones I'd like to include. So for each one of these, I'm going to choose each of my tracking categories. And what's going to come out of this is we're going to have a lovely report where we can see all of our tracking categories on the one page. And we're also going to be able to access this again without having to do any editing, because we're going to save it as a favorite. Making sure that we're setting this for the right date range. So if you're wanting to do this quarterly, and making sure we have a bit of a total as well. So this is going to be called my total. Okay, and I'm just going to call that total. So we can actually rename these columns as well, which is quite cool. I'm also going to name this tracking, or we might like to call it something different, like departmentals. And from there, I'm then going to select done. So once I've gone and added those tracking columns, you can now see that I have a lovely report with my unassigned, so everything that I haven't applied a tracking category to, and I then have east side, north, south, and west coast. I'll have my lovely total column at the end, and I can really start to dig down and see where I'm making profit in my business. So, you know, for your sheep stud and your cropping, where are you making that money? Where are you spending all of that money? What does that return on investment look like? So really, really great report. Tip and trick here, when we're saving this report, save it as custom. Give it a name that you'll recognize. So I like to call these profit and loss tracking. You also have the option to make these defaults. Now, I wouldn't go ahead and make these default, because you will want to run a normal P&L normally, but making the default one is good for other reports, and I'll show you in a moment. So if I click save on that one, and I now come to accounting and reports and come over to custom, you can now see that report I just created. I can now favorite that. Once I favorite that, you can now see that it appears on my menu. So really easy access for next time. And in fact, if you look at this list on your menu and you think, oh, I don't really do invoicing, or I don't really want to see that or this, you can completely come in here and change your favoriting, okay? So say if we want profit and loss balance sheet, we don't need the payables and receivables, we'll leave off the activity statement. We can simply just untick those if we don't want to see them. And then when we come back up to the menu, we just have those lovely 3 reports that we want to see again. Now, the cash summary report, Josie's told me that some of you really like this report. So this is one of our older reports, but it is still a great report. So you can see here that we have our cash summary, our income, less our operating expenses, and then we have our non-operating movements. We have our GST movements, and that's giving us kind of an overall net cash movement for us. So, so this is a really great report. So this one as well, you don't have the same abilities as the new reports like you just saw, but that doesn't mean you still can't come and export this report out to Excel or PDF, or simply publish this report so you can see that later on. So if I come through.
Sorry to butt in, Sarah, but with the cash summary, I guess I just wanted to sort of give an insight as to how that would be different to a profit and loss, because a lot of clients sort of get confused between the two. Like, a lot of people say, why doesn't my profit and loss then equal my bank account balance at the end of the period? So I just wanted to sort of highlight a couple of those differences, if that's possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Please go ahead and do that, because that's really important. Because particularly when the bank's asking for information, or you want to see where you're at in terms of cash flow, those are really important differences.
Yeah, so what happens is the bank actually want to see cash flow projections these days, because it's just to see if it passes the sniff test, really. You know, they want to know that you're going to have enough cash flow to meet your obligations or the debt that you're needing to service. So in a profit and loss, that includes all your income and expenses, but it doesn't include things like your current loan repayments that you're making, and also any planned plant equipment expenditure that you have, and also your GST. So your profit and loss doesn't include GST, it's GST exclusive. So all those things obviously contribute to the cash flow of your business. So this here is almost an all-rounder. If you exported that to Excel, you can actually manipulate the figures. And what I love about Xero is that when you export it into Excel, the formulas sort of flow through. And so if, say, for instance, if you can see under where it says total operating expenses, just that PAYG withholding payable, if we wanted to change that figure, for example, it would update the totals in Excel. So that's why it's a great template if you're wanting to produce a cash flow. But Sarah will touch on Budget Manager, because that's another thing to use. But I just wanted to highlight this report because it is really good in that sense. This like Xero again is just fantastic in the way that the reports operate in Excel. So, yeah.
Thank you very much, Josie. There's some really great points there. Yeah, so absolutely, just remembering those differences between the reports. So this is the cash summary report. We did publish the report there, but if you do need to access it again, remember it's underneath accounting and reports, and it's over here underneath financial. Now, again, if that's a report we want to see again all the time, click on that little star to favorite that, and that will turn up in our menu. So on that note, let's jump into the Budget Manager. And this is all going to tie in with tracking categories as well. So coming into our Budget Manager, what we're going to be presented with is an overall budget over a period of time. We are able to choose the period of time. And we are able to choose how many months worth of actuals are going to be coming through here. So obviously 3 months is great for a quarterly one. And we are able to choose when we're going to begin. So if I just have that set like so, and I say come down and do July, and then I'm just going to do 3 months, and then I'm going to change this to 12 months and then click update. So that's just going to update that like so. What I also have the ability to do in here is I can export this to Excel and import it back in, or I could simply just import a template in here. It's always best though to Excel the budget manager first, because that way you're going to be bringing through the layout that you need to then import it back in. So let me just open that up in Excel for you to show you what it looks like. So as you can see here now, I've got my full budget exported to Excel. All the formulas will stick for me. I can update any one of these lines, and then I can import this budget back in, and that will update in Xero. I can then use those budget amounts to build other reports later on, which is really, really cool. So if I don't want to export to Excel, I can actually set future projected figures in here in the Xero budget. So you can see here at the moment, I have sales. So if I type in 30,000 here, and I can choose to apply a fixed amount each month. I can choose to adjust it by an amount each month, or I can also choose to adjust it by a percentage. So if I have that set as 5%, you'll see now that's now going to apply that figure over the rest of the year for me, which is great. So I can do that with all of my accounts here. Now, I will just say, and I will just make a point here, at the moment, our Xero budget manager, as you can see, only has our profit and loss item. So this is not ideal, not the most ideal budget for you, but it's definitely great for beginners. We are actually working on this, and I'll be speaking with Josephine and the team after about building our own budget report within report templates for you guys to use as well. Okay, so for the moment, and just so you know, these are only profit and loss account codes here. Okay, but like Josie said, you can export these to Excel and manipulate those from there. Now, when we
have
the
cash summary, really, like you could export the cash summary, which is an old report, but that would work sort of the same way too.
Yeah, exactly. Now, when you enter in details in here, if you do decide to enter in details in here, and you need to click save so that you've actually saved the figures that you've entered in. If you go down the path of exporting out the cash summary, adding in some details and importing back into the budget manager, again, if you do an import, making sure you're clicking save so that those figures can be updated. What you can also do in the budget manager is you can actually have a budget for different parts of your business. So if you wanted to do a budget up for your cropping side of your business, we can actually create a cropping budget. And we can also then go and do a report where we review actuals versus our budgeted amounts by tracking categories. So just going that level deeper on your business analysis. So really, really cool. Just remember about your tracking categories. If you are going to be using tracking categories, making sure they have been updated by your bank reconciliation and your cash coding. So yeah, so just making sure you're aware of that. So you can have your overall budget, which includes everything, and then you can go and create tracking categories with your budget. So, Josie, is there anything else just on the budget manager or the budget?
Yeah, just a quick one. Can you pull through last year's data as a foundation to create a budget for this current financial year, for example?
So when you're in here and choosing the actuals, you can only go up to 12. You can only go up to 12 months. So the previous financial year, yes, but you can't go any further back than that.
Right.
So yep. See how I've got my start date at July? The 12 months will be preceding that start date. That's how it works.
Right. Yep.
Yep. So because I'm in the demo company today, we don't have very much historical data in the demo company. So that's why you're not seeing very many figures in there.
We do have a question here, and it says, are you saying you are developing a budget which will have the P&L lines and things like GST payments and liabilities etc., like loan repayments, other balance sheet items?
Yeah, so the budget manager one day will go into the V2 reporting, which means our new reporting. But what I meant by what I meant by that comment is that I'm going to help the Murray Nankivell team build a budget by their report templates, which is a set of templates that they use from day to day, which you will then be able to access via your published report. So that is in lieu of not having the balance sheet codes on the budget manager. So yes, we are looking into it, and yes, it is a highly requested feature. It's definitely on my top 5 wish list as a Xero employee that I give to the Xero product team. And what I say about that is, if you think this is something you really want and need as well for your business, highly recommend to make sure you send those requests through to Xero support so that they know there's a lot of people out there that would love to have this built.
Brilliant, thanks. And yeah, so just going back to that question with James. James, if you are needing that in the meantime, again, we do have that cash summary you can use, and you can actually get data from last year to pull through and just create a standalone budget in Excel, but that would have to be outside of Xero. You can't actually import that into Xero. Which obviously that means you can't compare to actuals, but in the meantime, if you need something that's very inclusive of all those things, just use that cash summary report and manipulate figures in there.
Awesome, cool. Okay, so just moving along to some other reporting tips and tricks. So making sure you're saving your reports as custom, making sure you're favouring your reports where possible. I'm not sure if many of you use invoicing in Xero, or you're actually entering bills in Xero, but for anyone that is, this is a great example of a report that you would save, that you would update the default. So coming in here, I quite like to see the outstanding GST column on any of my invoices that I've been owed. So you can see that you can, when you click on report settings, there's a whole range of details that you can add in here, including expected date, invoice seen or sent. Now that's all used via Xero's online invoicing. So if you use online invoicing, if you're using payment services, which I highly recommend, you can actually then come back here and do a report on all the invoices that your customers have actually clicked into and looked at. So that's obviously going to be great for chasing up those debtors and getting a better lockup and cash flow. So if you want to see that custom report again, but you want to see it all the time, you can then go make that as default. So next time you come into this report, those exact same settings are going to be there. Cool. So, so we have our balance sheet and our profit and loss, important reports. Our cash summary is an important report. We also have obviously our activity statements, which is also another important report. So if you are generating your own activity statements, do make sure you are publishing all of your activity statements or updating them to finalized. So really important that you're finalizing each of your activity statements if you're doing them, okay? So to finalize them, you're clicking the button here, obviously, once you've reconciled all of those figures. We do, of course, have other ways to do a bit of a GST review if you wish. So over underneath accounting and reports, you can come to your account transactions report. We can select certain reports here. So we're just going to leave the bank accounts off. We're going to do last quarter and click on report settings. So here we're going to group by GST rate name, and we're actually going to summarize, by GST rate name. So this is all in the details of how we can run this report. And we can also include our tracking columns. So if I want to see which ones are in the farming side of the business, I can include those. So now when I click update, I now have a summary of last quarter, all of the dollar figure amounts that were both excluded, all of the dollar figure amounts that were GST free, all of the dollar amounts that were GST on expenses and GST on income. And so again, if that's something that you want to see again, save it as custom, give it a name that you'll remember, and then favorite that later on. Now, your account transactions report is really where all of your general ledger items sit. This is a great report to have a bit of a review. Also, just be aware of some of the other things that you can do in the reporting that may be useful for you. So you can filter by certain items here. So if I only want to see items that have been sent to a certain tracking category, I can filter by east side. And that's going to bring up everything that was sent to that east side region. So if I click on my region column, you can now see here, I've got my region and I've got my details. What I can also do is I can add other filters, and I can filter by all sorts of things. I can filter by account code. I can filter by description. I can filter by the reference. I can also filter by source. Source is actually the type of transaction that has happened. Okay, so lots of things you can do in your report settings. Always recommend to click on report settings so that you can see more.
Just while you're maneuvering to the next thing, going back to your activity statement report, the reason Sarah said to finalise those reports is because it sort of takes a screenshot of what's happened at that point in time, because often we have some clients that will go and change things from a previous period, like after the BAS has been lodged. And that means that you obviously will have a GST adjustment along those lines, and it's easier for us to see where those adjustments sit because you've made a change in a period that's already been lodged and finalised, and we'll need to sort of reflect that again.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a really great point, Josie. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. A couple of other quick things I want to show you guys. So the uncoded statement line report is something that you could use internally if you'd like to with your businesses in terms of your bank reconciliation. So this will actually run a check over all of your bank accounts to see what hasn't been coded. Okay, so that's really, really cool. So yeah, today for the demo company, we're obviously all up to date. So that's a good one. We also have a new report that picks up duplicates. So if you are finding you do have some duplicates in your bank accounts, this is a great report that you can use to check any duplicates that have happened in any of your bank statements. So that one is also a great one when you're checking your reconciliation. Okay. So that will pick up any duplicate statement lines between your bank feed and your bank reconciliation. The other thing I want to quickly mention is our short-term cash flow and business snapshot tools. So these are a lot nicer on the eyes in terms of visuals. So what we're going to do is update that to year to date. So what we are looking at here is how our business is doing in graphs. So we can see here our profit and loss, our income, expenses. We have a little ratio here for our gross profit margin. We can see some of our largest expenses and whether they have increased or decreased from this time last year. And also have a little bit of an overview of your financial position and cash. Now, if you wanted to print that, you can go and print that off. We also have what we call a short-term cash flow. Now, this one is a work in progress, but again, these are tools that you can be using now to see how your business is doing, an estimate of an idea of how your business is doing. So you can see in our short-term cash flow, again, we have a lovely graph to tell us how things are doing. This is obviously going over 30 days. We can select that to go over 7 days as well. So at the moment, we are limited to those two choices. We have our top invoices owed to you and bills to pay, and you're going to start seeing all these suggested actions and things like that as well, which is pretty cool. So for any of you who are doing invoicing, a lot of invoicing, you can actually start to come and add in expected dates and that actually helps with your budgeting as well, so that you know when money's coming in for your cash flow. Yeah, so just wanted to mention those two tools there, a part of reporting, but they do sit underneath the business menu. One other quick thing I wanted to mention before we go, just mindful of time, fuel tax credits and other items that you may want to track in Xero. So if you are using invoicing, or even if you're using these on, invoicing, you can create what you call an item. So if you wanted to create an item called, say, for example, fuel, I purchased this item, you can have a account there. So this is the account that it will be coded to. So this is in the idea of a bill. When we then go and create that bill, we'll then have the option to select that item. But the point of using the items is that it pre-fills a bill for me. That will also pre-fill our invoice if we use it for selling. But if we use items, we're then able to come and run a report at quarter end, as an example. So this is a great example of how can I get my litres really quickly for my fuel tax credits. If I'm using items on any of those bills, I can then come and do an item summary or details list, and that's actually going to total all of those litres for me and amounts in there. So that's just an idea to give out to you. If anyone is out there that has a lot of fuel, a lot of rebates that they're putting through on their buzzers, this is another way that you can actually track and total those.
And if you don't use bills, for example, when you're reconciling, you could just put in the description the total amount of litres and go to your account transactions and just look up the fuel account.
Yeah, that's another great way of doing it, is that when you're in cash coding, so if you see any of your motor vehicle fuel in here, for an example, you could just be putting in the reference how many litres it is. So you could put in the word litres, or you could just put in the amount, whichever you need. And then what the team can do is then export that to Excel, total that up for you to then do the calculation.
We've got another question here. Can you use percentages for items when you're creating an item? Can you use percentages in there?
Okay, so within items, can we have it split? So within one item, can we have it split? I'm not sure that we can do that, because when you're setting up the item, this is just the default, but you can change it. Okay, so say if we just have that as one and we have that as the account, there's no actual item, there's no actually amount here that we're putting in. All we're doing is setting where the amount is going to, the purchase account, what tax rate it needs, and the unit price. So the price of the unit if you're going to use it in that regard. So when we're adding that item to a bill, we can split it on the bill, but we can't split it within this edit item area, if that's what you mean.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So you can split in the bill, which is good.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. So just on that, any other reports you'd like me to quickly go over at all? Anything that you think that would be useful?
I think we've covered some of the ones that really cut to the chase, because a lot of people doing bookkeeping sort of know the basics, but I think that they just don't realise that there are these reports within Xero that already have the information there. They don't need to be doing it in a separate program. So everything's all in one spot, and that's why I thought it was great to be able to highlight the ones that we've gone through tonight. But if anyone who's sort of watching would like to know anything or touch on anything, please just raise your hand, or in the Q&A box, let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. The great thing is about the reports is that you're collaborating with your advisors, Nankivell, and they can obviously assist you as well, but you are looking at the same information if you do ever need a hand with collating these reports at much more detail. You can also jump in and create comments on your reports and save them. So if you are going into the profit and loss, or if you are going into the cash summary, you can actually come and add what we call a text block. So
fantastic.
Yeah.
So there will be a recording of the session too. So if we've gone over anything too quickly and you just want to have a look in your own time, yeah, there'll be a recording and you'll be able to play us back. And I think that was all really, yeah. But with the cash summary again, just to demonstrate, Sarah, are you able to sort of export that to Excel, for example, and just show how the formulas stick, if that makes sense, how they stick?
Yeah, of course. Yep. So coming down here, if we export this to Excel, we can also export it to PDF. When we export it to Excel, it will open up nicely for us here. And when you see the totals, when you click in the cell, you can see that all of our totals come through for us, which is awesome. We have our lovely percentage column, variance column down there, and we have all of those, non-cash items as well that are really key to seeing what our cash movement is and our forecasted cash movement. Yeah, and then
is there a possibility, we've got Alicia here sort of wondering whether we can touch on TPAR setup. Is that something in Xero at all?
Yeah, I can quickly.
Contractors and things. Yeah, if we have just a couple of minutes to be able to touch on that.
Yeah, I can quickly touch on that. So coming into our details. Okay, just coming back here, sorry. Contractors. Okay, I'm just having a bit of a mind blank, apologies. Was the question about how to set up the contacts to lodge your TPAR?
Yeah, like just to be able to monitor contractor payments, is there some simple way of being able to find a report that will basically be able to give that information?
Yeah, so when we come in here, so what we do is we come to contacts, and what we're doing is creating a group. And by creating a group and adding your contacts to that group, so say it is contractors. So, while we are in our contact list, if we want to add a couple of these, say that do need to lodge those TPAR reports, or say for your business, you need to add those for your TPAR report. We simply add them to the group that you make that's called something like contractors, okay? So to add a group, we simply select new on the left-hand side, okay? So you might want to call it TPAR, you might want to call it contractors. So so that's completely up to you. Then once we've made the group, then we go to accounting and reports. And then underneath tax, we then have our taxable payments annual report. Once we go into the taxable payment annual report, we then go and set up some rules. So those rules are going to be based on the group that I just set up. So remember, we added those contacts to the contractors group. I can now say in here, okay, I need to surface all of the details about those contacts in the contractors, and I can also come and say where they've been paid from. So generally it'll be purchases. You might have an account called subcontractors. You might have a special account called something else. And then we can click save. What that is then going to do is it's then going to let us know if we have made any payments there. They're going to now appear here. So I wonder if I just change that to 2021. I'll set that up again. And it'll also let you know whether you have the correct details, because of course you do need all of the ABNs and all of those other details to actually lodge that through to the ATO. Okay, so you can see here for this one, we've got one of those contacts come through. Xero's let us know that there's some incomplete details, and it will give us those total amounts as well. So once we come in here, we can actually click in there to edit those details, and we can also see that actual purchase underneath there as well. So you can imagine if there's a number, this will all be summarised for you here. So once you've reviewed them, now I believe that you must have all the details in there before you can actually lodge it. Otherwise it will come up with an error. Then you can actually, if you've got yourself set up, you can then go through and lodge that to the ATO. Does that kind of cover your question?
Yeah, I think that's really good, actually. I'm impressed. It's great, actually. It's a great area, a great report. Now, just mindful of time again, one important thing is obviously support. So where do we go to get support? Because that's why we love referring people to Xero, is because it differentiates itself from all the other competitors just purely on the support, really. Like, I know there's a lot of other features that differentiate it, but the support's fantastic. It's so quick. Can you let us know the best ways?
Yeah, absolutely. So just on our takeaways, creating our bank rules, saving our reports as customer favourite, using your tracking categories, cash summary, budget manager for deeper business analysis. So when it comes to, right, this is all great. What if I want to know more information? What if I do need help from Xero? So from your Xero logon, you have your question mark up here at the top. And you can actually go through and get support on our Xero Central page. That is a knowledge base of everything you'll ever need to know on Xero. What you also have the ability to do is click on the contact support. If you're unable to click on the contact support from there, you will be able to access support from Xero Central as well. Okay. What we also have are learning videos. So if you would like to know more about the budget manager, more about editing your own reports, or more about tracking categories, we actually have a whole load of courses on Xero Central that you're able to jump on and watch. So if I just come over here.
So Xero Central is kind of like Google for Xero, basically. It's really good. I love it.
Yeah,
like it's almost your first port of call. You go there and it's not a long-winded article. It'll be nice, brief steps that take you through how to do things. And that's why I like it, because I'm always Googling things. So.
Yeah. So coming through to Xero Central, my computer's having a moment, sorry. You can come through, search your questions to say, I want to know more about TPAR. You type in TPAR, the first page that comes up, the taxable payments annual report, 6 problems with the taxable payments annual report. And you'll see that people have come in here and asked questions as well. And Xero Support actually jump on here and answer those questions on the community. What you also have is learning. So say I also want to watch a video or do a course on TPAR. We click in TPAR there, and then we get up reporting in Xero. Okay, so that will obviously go through a part of your TPAR. If I want to know more about the budget manager, for example, I can go and click in that, select that, and that's going to then bring up some really cool videos and pre-recorded videos we have on managing your cash flow. We have some courses on there as well, if you want to go through and learn more. But with contacting Xero Support, we have around the sun support. We have a really great team. They'll get back to you generally within 24 hours. So absolutely, you're able to ask them any question. The tip I'd say with Xero Support is just make sure you've come over to Xero Central first before sending that query through. Okay. So yeah, we have a great support network here at Xero. We are here to help. And if you do have any suggestions, if you think anything's missing in terms of learning or support, please do let the team know. Always looking to improve.
Yeah, and so again, like that support from Xero is part of your whole package, so it's free. Go on there and you can actually invite them into your file, and they can have a look and see if there's anything quite difficult or technical that's going on in there and be able to help you.
Awesome. Yeah, so thank you so much everyone for joining today. So we've gone a little bit over. So just remember your resources. Xero support's always there. Your Murray Nankivell team's there. You've got Xero Central and your learning videos. We've also got a whole load of resources over on our business continuity page, which is also on Xero Central. Yeah, for you to go and check out. So is there any other further questions? If you do have any itching questions that you do want to ask, please contact your Murray Nankivell team, and they'll be able to help you out from there. And yeah, maybe let them know as well what topics you might want to see next time if you've found this really useful.
Thank you very much, Sarah, for your time. It's always lovely to have you and to be able to take our sessions. We really appreciate your time, and thanks everybody. Hope you have a good night.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Bye.